Real English for your daily life.
Master English together.
Quick question. When you put your phone down, do you feel calm? Or weirdly empty?
That's the problem, isn't it? The screen goes dark, but your head keeps buzzing, like the day never really ended.
Exactly. And if you're checking messages, emails, and social apps all day, that digital overload can leave you tired before dinner.
This is a B1 level episode, perfect for intermediate learners. Beginners, you're welcome too. And yes, you're probably listening while half reading a notification right now.
Honestly, same. And that is why this topic matters. Today we're talking about how to stay mentally balanced in a digital world without throwing your phone into a lake.
Please don't do that. I like phones. I just don't like how they act like tiny alarm bells in my pocket.
We found something simple but powerful today. A way to give your brain a little rest from all that noise. It's not about quitting the internet.
Right. It's about learning when to disconnect, when to recharge, and how to stop letting every ping control your mood.
And if that sounds impossible, stay with us, because this episode is going to feel very real. You know that moment when you open one app, then another, and suddenly it's 20 minutes later?
And somehow you've read 8 headlines, liked 3 photos, and still don't know why you opened the phone in the first place.
That's the mental overload so many people live with every day. The brain doesn't get a clean break. It just keeps reacting.
Today we'll show you 2 easy ideas. One is about creating quiet time, even if it's only 10 minutes. The other is about learning to filter out the stuff you don't actually need.
Stay until the end for our Word Tour 5 expressions you can start using right away.
And here's a tiny challenge. Are you more of an I check once person or an I keep refreshing person? Just pick one.
Be honest, we won't judge much.
And later, we'll give you one tiny trick that can change how your whole evening feels. But first, let's name the problem clearly. The noise is real.
Let me take you into a very normal day. You wake up, reach for your phone, and before your feet even touch the floor, you're already inside someone else's life.
That hit hard. 1 minute you're looking for the weather, and the next minute you're comparing your morning to 3 perfect breakfasts, 2 gym videos, and 1 person who somehow answered emails at 6:12 a.m.
Exactly. And that isn't just annoying. It can build into real overload because your brain is taking in more emotional input than it can comfortably handle.
And the tricky part is that the overload doesn't always feel dramatic. Sometimes it just feels like low-level tension, a tight chest, a short temper, or that strange sense that you're always behind.
Right. You don't always crash. Sometimes you just keep going in a fog. And that fog becomes your normal.
I've had days where I opened my laptop to answer 1 email and then saw 6 more messages, a calendar reminder, and a news alert about something I couldn't fix anyway.
And that's the point. Digital life isn't only busy. It's invasive. It follows you from room to room, from task to task, until your mind never really gets to land.
So the first part of our idea is not complicated. We call it quiet time. That's a short, protected stretch where you step away from screens on purpose.
Not forever. Just long enough for your brain to notice the difference. 10 minutes can matter if those 10 minutes are real.
For example, imagine this. You finish lunch, put your phone face down, and sit by a window. No scrolling, no checking, no background video. Just breathing.
Or you stretch your shoulders, drink some water, and stare at a tree like it's your new coworker. It sounds simple, but the nervous system loves simple.
My nervous system definitely approves of trees. My inbox, not so much.
The reason quiet time helps is that your mind stops receiving constant cues. Every notification asks for a reaction. Every reaction takes energy.
And when that keeps happening, your attention gets fragmented. You're not really present in one place because part of you is always waiting for the next beep.
That's when people start feeling guilty for resting. They sit down, then think, I should reply, or I should check, or I should check up. Suddenly rest feels like a task.
And that's exactly why many people never feel done. They're not failing at work. They're living inside a system that keeps opening loops.
Yes, and if you've ever felt your mood shift after 10 minutes online, you're not imagining it. A bad comment, a stressful headline, or one comparison can stay with you for hours.
That is why mental balance online isn't about being stronger. It's about being more selective with what gets your attention.
Which brings us to the second part, filter out. Not everything deserves a spot in your head.
Exactly. You don't need to read every post, open every thread, or follow every conversation. Some things are useful. A lot of things are just noise dressed up as importance.
Noise dressed up as importance is such a real phrase. The internet loves drama, and our attention loves to pretend drama is research.
Guilty. I've told myself, I'm just checking one more thing, and 20 minutes later I'm reading opinions from strangers about a topic I didn't even care about yesterday.
That's the spiral. The brain thinks more information will make it safer, but after a point, it just gets heavier.
So if you want a practical image, think of your attention like a bag. If you keep putting every random object into it, soon you can't even pick up the bag.
And the bag isn't broken. It's just full. That fullness is what many people call emotional overload, though the feeling shows up in very ordinary moments.
Let's make it concrete. Imagine you work in an office or at home and your phone keeps vibrating during deep focus time. One message leads to another, then a group chat, then a reaction, then another reaction, then another reaction.
Before long, the task you started has disappeared under layers of interruption. You don't just lose time. You lose the shape of your thinking.
That shape matters. When your mind keeps shifting, even small decisions feel expensive.
And that's where people get tired of themselves. They say, why can't I just focus? But the better question is, how many things are asking for me at once?
That's a much kinder question, and it opens the door to a better response.
Let me give a tiny real-life scene. You're standing in a kitchen after work, phone in hand, half listening to a voice note, half reading a group chat, and still thinking about what you forgot to do this morning.
That's not multitasking. That's emotional juggling with no safety net.
Emotional juggling is exactly right, and most people do it without noticing. Until they feel flat, snappy, or strangely sad for no clear reason.
So here's the connection. If your mind never gets a clean pause, it can't sort what matters from what doesn't.
Which is why quiet time and filter out work so well together. Quiet time gives your brain space. Filter out protects that space after you create it.
Let's try a quick practice. Picture your last 20 minutes online. What stayed with you? What was useful? What was just emotional clutter?
You can ask yourself 2 questions. 1, does this help me today? 2, does this deserve my mood?
That's powerful because it turns attention into a choice, not a reflex.
And I know some listeners are thinking, but my job needs me online all the time. That's real. This isn't about disappearing from the world.
Right. It's about creating a little structure inside the chaos. Even 5 minutes between tasks can stop the day from blending into one long blur.
Or maybe you keep your phone outside the bedroom for the last 15 minutes of the day. Not as a punishment, just as a boundary.
That boundary can feel uncomfortable at first because silence can feel louder than noise when you're used to constant input.
And that discomfort is important. It tells you how full things have become.
In a weird way, the silence is the alarm, not the phone.
So we're not chasing perfection here. We're noticing patterns. We're noticing what drains us, what calms us, and what we keep calling normal, even when it's wearing us down.
And that noticing is the first step toward change. Not a huge dramatic reset, just a clearer view of what your mind is carrying.
There's also something emotional here. When you choose quiet time, you're telling yourself that your own mind matters.
Yes, and when you filter out the extra noise, you're protecting your attention like it's valuable. Because it is.
A lot of us treat attention like it's endless. It's not. It's more like a small lamp than a giant floodlight.
And if you point that lamp everywhere, all day, no wonder you feel drained.
So the story so far is simple. Digital overload is real, and your brain needs recovery spaces.
And later we'll show you exactly how to use those spaces with 2 easy steps. But before that, let's stay with the feeling for one more moment.
Because if you're exhausted by the constant noise, you're not weak. You're human.
And that human brain needs pauses, filters, and a little mercy.
Next, we'll move from the feeling into the first real shift. And there is a phrase for that. We'll break it down later. I still think the biggest issue is that people never get a real break. They just swap one screen for another and call it rest.
But I don't buy that as the whole story. Some people need to stay connected for work, family, or safety, so just disconnect can sound a little naive.
I get that, but that's missing the whole picture. Nobody's saying disappear forever. We're saying create a buffer so your brain isn't under constant pressure.
Yet that buffer sounds unrealistic for busy people. If your boss messages at 8 p.m. and your group chat is exploding, quiet time can feel like a luxury.
That's fair, but even 5 minutes matters. If you keep waiting for a perfect hour, you'll never get one. And the overload keeps winning.
I still wonder if people are just being dramatic. A lot of adults have always had stress, and now we just give it a trendy name because it's on a phone.
That's a stretch. The phone isn't just on in the background. It keeps interrupting attention, mood, and recovery all day long.
Okay, but isn't that partly self-control? If someone keeps scrolling, maybe the real problem is discipline, not the device.
Discipline matters, sure, but attention isn't a moral test. When your brain gets constant cues, it learns to expect the next hit. That's why overload feels sticky.
Sticky is a good word, like gum on your shoe. Annoying, hard to ignore, and somehow everywhere.
Exactly. And that is why disconnecting for a short time can help. You're not quitting life. You're giving your mind space to settle.
But what if disconnecting just makes people more anxious? Some listeners might think, if I stop checking, I'll miss something important.
That's real, but the fear itself can be part of the problem. If every alert feels urgent, your nervous system never learns what's actually important.
So you're saying the issue isn't only the message, it's the meaning we give the message.
Yes, and that's where a little digital mental adaptation comes in. It's not a huge theory you need to memorize. It's just the idea that your mind can adjust if you give it better conditions.
Better conditions like what? Because people hear self-care and think candles, soft music, and a face mask they don't have time for.
Nothing that fancy. Picture this. You finish lunch, put your phone in another room, and take 10 quiet minutes to breathe and stretch.
10 minutes sounds small, but I still worry people will say that's not enough to matter.
Small doesn't mean useless. A short break can interrupt the spiral. And once the spiral breaks, your brain can stop bracing for the next ping.
But what if your day's packed? Then those 10 minutes feel like another task on a list that already won't fit.
Then make it tiny enough to survive. 2 minutes at your desk, 1 minute by the window, or a slow walk to get water. The point is the pattern, not perfection.
Okay, I can respect that. But I still think people need a practical way to choose what deserves attention. Or they'll just come back to the same mess.
Totally. That's where filtering out comes in. You ask 2 questions. Do I need this today? And does this change my next action? If the answer is no, it can wait.
That sounds almost too simple, which is usually a good sign. Simplicity tends to work when your brain is already full.
Right, because overload makes everything feel equally urgent. A good filter doesn't make the world quieter. It makes your choices clearer.
And clear choices reduce panic. If I know one chat can wait, I don't have to treat it like a fire drill.
Exactly, and that's the emotional shift we want. Not, I'm offline forever, but I decide what gets in.
Still, some people will push back and say, my life is online, my friends are online, my job is online. That isn't laziness. That's reality.
And I agree. This isn't about becoming a digital monk. It's about building a small quiet time ritual and learning how to disconnect just enough to breathe.
So the goal isn't silence for its own sake. It's not feeling hunted by your own notifications.
Yes, and once people feel that difference, they usually want more of it. Not because they're weak, but because calm feels better than constant reaction.
Fair point. And maybe the real debate isn't online or offline. It's whether your online life is running you or whether you're running it.
That's exactly the question. And if listeners are thinking, okay, but how do I actually do this tomorrow morning? Good, because that's where we go next. So we've named the pressure, and we've seen why the brain gets stuck in digital overload.
Right, and now we're switching from the problem to the language behind it. The exact words that make this topic so useful.
We'll revisit the same ideas in fresh ways so the meanings feel natural, not memorized.
And by the end, you'll be able to use these 5 expressions in real conversations without sounding forced.
After all that talk about digital overload, let's slow it down and look at the exact words we kept using.
Yeah, and the cool part is that these aren't just textbook words. They're the words people actually reach for when life feels too loud.
Take overload. In our episode, it wasn't just a random buzzword. It meant too much input for your mind to comfortably handle.
Like when your brain has 20 tabs open, 3 message threads blinking, and 1 news headline screaming at you all at once.
Exactly. You could say, I'm feeling overload from all these notifications. And that sounds natural in this context, even if in everyday speech you'd also hear, I'm overloaded.
And the feeling behind it is the key part. It's not only busy, it's mentally crowded, like there's no room left to think clearly.
Then we had disconnect. I liked that one because it sounds simple, but in this episode it meant stepping away from screens on purpose.
Right? Not disappearing forever, just creating a break. You might say, I need to disconnect for an hour. And people immediately understand you want space.
It can also be emotional. Sometimes you don't just disconnect from a device. You disconnect from the constant pressure to respond instantly.
That's the part I need most. My phone acts like it needs an answer before I've even finished blinking.
Same here. And the funny thing is, once you disconnect for a bit, the world doesn't collapse. which feels almost suspicious at first.
That moment is powerful because it reminds you that you're allowed to step back.
The next word, recharge, fits that idea beautifully. In our story, it wasn't about a battery icon. It was about giving your mind energy again.
Yes, and a real recharge can be tiny. 10 quiet minutes, a stretch, a walk, a deep breath. Your brain doesn't need a luxury spa, it just needs a pause.
You could say, I need to recharge before dinner. And that tells people you're not lazy, you're recovering.
And that's a huge difference. Recharge sounds active and healthy, not dramatic.
Exactly. And that leads perfectly into filter out. This one is so useful because it doesn't mean ignore everything.
Right, that's important. To filter out something is to remove the noise that doesn't deserve your attention.
So if you say, I need to filter out the pointless updates, you're making a smart choice, not avoiding life.
Basically, you're not being rude to the internet. You're editing your attention like a very strict but fair teacher.
I love that image. And in real life, you can filter out low-value messages, random scrolling, and every little thing that tries to steal your mood.
Which brings us to quiet time. I really like this phrase because it sounds gentle, but it has real power.
Quiet time means a planned moment with less noise, fewer demands, and more breathing room.
You might say, I need quiet time after work. And people usually get it right away.
It's not empty time, it's restorative time. The difference matters.
And if you're like me, quiet time is the moment when your brain finally stops reenacting your inbox.
That's exactly the kind of image I won't forget. And here's the nice thing, all 5 words fit together. Overload is the pressure, disconnect is the break, recharge is the recovery, filter out is the choice, and quiet time is the space.
That full chain makes the meaning stick. You don't just learn the words, you feel the sequence.
So if you're speaking naturally, you could say, I need to disconnect, recharge, and create quiet time so I can filter out overload.
That's a strong sentence. And it sounds like a real human said it, not a grammar book.
And that's the goal, right?
Exactly. And now these phrases are ready for your life, not just your notebook.
So today, we looked at something many of us feel but rarely name. Digital overload. We talked about why it leaves you tense, tired, and strangely empty, even when you have been doing nothing all day.
And we gave that feeling a shape. Disconnect from the noise, recharge your mind, filter out what does not matter, and protect a little quiet time.
Here are 3 small things to try tonight. First, put your phone away for 10 minutes before bed and just sit, stretch, or breathe. Second, choose one app to check less often for one day. Third, ask yourself, do I really need this information right now?
Those questions are powerful because they slow the loop down. You are not being lazy. You're giving your attention a job again.
I used to think rest had to look perfect, like a whole free afternoon. But honestly, I started feeling better when I stopped waiting for perfect timing and just made tiny pockets of space.
Same. I once said I would check just one message, and an hour later I was somehow reading about a chair I did not even need. That was not a great use of my brain.
We've all been there. The good news is that change can be small and still matter.
Before you go, we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments what's one digital habit you want to change this week.
We read every single comment. Try one tiny reset today and see how it feels.
Next time, we'll keep building your everyday English with another real-life topic that matters.
Thanks for listening and take care of your mind.
Bye for now.